Yep, no, people are entering, so we'll just wait a minute or so. Okay, I think I'll start just with the introduction, and then I think a few more people will flow in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Special Education Legal Clinic. My name is Mark Weicker, and I'm with Abdenauer Weicker. And we are partnered with the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities and Disability Rights Ohio, so OCECD and DRO, to offer the Special Education Legal Clinic, which includes workshops every month on the third Monday of the month, followed by individual guidance sessions where we provide one-on-one advice sessions to individuals who have questions about special education, mostly parents, but anyone who has questions, we can offer sessions too. So I'm joined today by Tammy Sebastian and Renee Stromsky, and I think Danielle Randolph will join at some point too. Tammy's going to do a presentation today based on notice requirements and some work that she's been doing with the Department of Education on updates to notice requirements. And the workshop might not quite last an hour today, but we'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end with Tammy, myself, and Renee. And before we get started, just a couple things to note. You signed up for the legal clinic at a URL. It's lawyersforstudents.com/legal clinic. That's where you can sign up for any of the sessions. And we have posted our new transition series. We're going to take 1 month off, so we won't have a workshop in August, but we'll start up in September, and it's going to be based on post-secondary transition. And there's a really good series of workshops put together by the 3 organizations I mentioned, and we have guest speakers, another private attorney, Derek Graham, and 2 guest speakers from the Department of Education that will be joining us in the next series. Again, those are available to sign up now. You can also sign up for those individual guidance sessions there. And a couple other things that exist from that same page. There's a resource page where we have lots of helpful special education related resources from both disability rights and OCECD, template letters, for example, and tip sheets. And then we also have a research page or a research portal for special education parents to help them find the legal authorities they may need when they're researching any particular issue. So a couple things that exist on the same page. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Tammy Sebastian.
Thank you, Mark. I'm excited about the next series as well, the transition series. It's going to be great. So, yes, love the partnership that we have. So just a little bit before I get started, I wanted to just give everybody a brief overview about the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities and a little bit about myself. So as Mark said, my name's Tammy Sebastian. I am the statewide program coordinator with the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, or some of you might know us as OCECD or the Coalition. We have couple names we're called, but we answer to all of them. So I also am a parent of 2 individuals with disabilities. My oldest has ADHD and my youngest has autism, generalized anxiety disorder, and sensory processing disorder. And they are now young adults. So with that being said, this really going into today's presentation, we're going to be talking about a little bit about that lived experience and why the Ohio Department of Education Office for Exceptional Children asked the Parent Training Information Center to do this work. So again, a little bit about OCECD. We are a statewide nonprofit organization that also has held the grant for the Parent Training Information Center for the state of Ohio. So under IDEA, every state has to have a Parent Training Information Center, and we are that for the state of Ohio. So what we do is we support families, we give a voice to parents and children with disabilities in the state of Ohio. And it's really important to say that everything that we do is at no cost to parents. However, Mark or somebody will be throwing a link in the chat sometime during this training. We just ask, and I bring this up when we talk about our services being no cost to parents, that evaluation link's really important to us to enable us to keep doing the work and being able to provide those free services and supports to parents. So we ask that you go ahead and fill that out. I'll pause a little bit right before the end to have you fill that out. So with that being said, oh, my slide's not advancing. Okay, did it advance? Thumbs up. Okay, good. So a little bit, and as Mark said, we're talking about the parent notice update today, or some of you may know it as you know, we've had many different names. Our last name was A Guide to Parents' Rights in the Special Education Process. And before that, it was Whose Idea. And so why are we updating? So everybody may or may not know, so we'll just give you a little brief overview. The operating standards, the revisions were up for their 5-year revision updates. And so through that process, and we're going to show you a little bit about the timeline, through that process, there has to be a period for public comment with the rule revisions. And they received, and I would actually even say the department have received feedback after a guide had came out throughout the time it was out, as well as with the rule revisions, that there was a need for an update to the parent notice, the procedural safeguards. And so with that being said, I really feel like the Office for Exceptional Children really heard that, and they started with the thought process of making sure that there was a parent voice on the new updates. And with that being said, they brought in the Parent Training Information Center. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go throughout. So, and this is just a timeline, just a brief overview of the timeline on the rule revisions. And as you can see, it started very early on in February. In January of October 2019 to January 2020 with the recommendations in the first draft. And then as you see, it goes all the way to the winter of 2022. And we have been working on the parent notice, the Ohio Coalition, along with partnering with OEC for the past year. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go throughout and what the timelines are now. So for those of you who are familiar or who may not be familiar, we're just going to kind of do a high level overview of what the parent notice is. These are your procedural safeguards as a parent and a student under IDEA. So these are, you know, and a lot of times and I have to tell you, going throughout the process and having the different forums and the feedback, you know, we had learned from parents that there's not enough of an emphasis of how important your procedural safeguards are, or the parent notice is. But these are the times that you're supposed to receive them. So anytime that a parent requests it, or at least once a year at your annual IEP meeting. Initial referral for evaluation. I always like this one: when the first complaints filed with the Ohio Department of Education. Hopefully you would have seen these quite a few times before you're writing that complaint. Also the same with when due process complaint was filed with the Ohio Department of Education. If there is a change in the student's placement, and at least 1 year before the child's 18th birthday, it's supposed to be given to the parents and the student. So just wanted to kind of give you an overview for those who might not know and are new to the process. Also, it's very important to talk about what the parent notice requires. And I'm telling you this because a lot of the feedback that we received, and this was actually, I believe, in the comments in the rule revisions when they were talking about the need for an update, there was a lot of comments about the guide being litigious, and it was only addressing things that look to be more as conflict. And so there was a reason for that. And so we wanted to highlight, and we actually made sure, and I'll be showing you at the end of this the PowerPoint, I'll be giving you a high level overview of the draft. And these are the areas of what it requires. So it requires independent evaluations, prior written notice, parental consent, access to education records. And you can see, I'm not going to read all of these to you, but if you look here, you see a lot about mediations, due process, unilateral placement, civil actions, appeals. So that is the reason why a guide looked like it was only addressing conflict, because what you seen in a guide was only what was required in the parent notice. And we're going to talk a little bit about what this new draft is going to look like. And I just want to let you know, I keep referring to it as a draft because it is currently in the legal department with the Office for Exceptional Children. So until that final approval goes through, it will remain a draft. So we want to talk a little bit about the process and what we did as we were going through making the updates to the parent notice. And so we had many stakeholder checkpoints from the very beginning. We had started meeting with SAPAC, which is the State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children. I would say in the beginning stages before we even had a title, and just trying to do a layout. So at the very beginning, we started with those stakeholder checkpoints. Throughout the process, we also had an OCALICON presentation. We did parent forums. The parents were invited to. We did professional forums. We've had it go through the Office for Exceptional Children leadership. We've also presented it to state support teams. And some of those professional people were, we had district representatives, attorneys, and we actually, I would say our professional feedback forums were probably the most attended. And our parent forums, we did not see as much as we would like, but we really believe that, again, we have identified that there is a need for parents to understand what this document is. And so we know we need to do a better job of making sure they understand how important this is to them. And I think you'll see how we try to emphasize that in the document. We also cross-reference documents the entire time. We were working through the Ohio operating standards. We looked at whose idea, we used a guide. Obviously the rule revisions were the basis of those. So constantly we're cross-referencing where we thought there were some good ideas and whose idea, or if we thought there's some good ideas in a guide, we'd bring those over. So we really wanted to make sure that we were looking at everything and taking in all the information from what we had. And so we also reviewed those comments from the comment period on the rules. And throughout the year, the process that we've been working on this, every week we met with OEC. They had access to all of our documents. Any questions or concerns, we address those in the weekly meetings. It says team continues to meet 4 days a week. We are not, because we have completed the draft. But we were working about 4 days a week for a year. So just give you an idea of how much work went into this, intention, purpose, and passion. We also looked at other states before we even started the work. We wanted to see what else was out there. I'm happy to say that I feel like we have a really good document. There's a lot of other states that it's just content. And we wanted to make sure that parents were able to engage with this as well as professionals, and that we were making it accessible for all. And so with that being said, and we talked a little bit about the title in the very beginning, and we really wanted parents to be able to identify and relate to this. And so they felt ownership in it. And one of the things that we were seeing trending across Ohio, not just across Ohio, nationally, we've seen a lot, even at the Department of Education level. There is a roadmap theme. And actually, we got a lot of feedback from parents how well they liked the roadmap theme. So it was parent friendly. There was also work out there, I believe. I want to say the parent mentors worked on a evaluation roadmap with the Ohio Department of Education Office for Exceptional Children. So there was already another roadmap that we kind of tied into that. And we really wanted to make, and actually statewide agencies, we also seen that also had the roadmap theme. So we really thought that there was a continuity across the board for parents and that they would be able to identify with that roadmap theme. And, our mission and vision throughout this document was really, we wanted to make sure that it was, that we held diversity, it was equitable, that was a top priority, and recognizing that families are unique and honoring the differences and what families may look like. And we also we were very lucky to have on our team our multicultural information specialist who is bilingual. And throughout the document, one of the things that we kept in mind, because what happens a lot of times when documents are being translated, it's an afterthought of whether or not that word is able to be translated. So throughout the document, if there was a word that she felt that was not going to be able to be translated, we made sure that we changed that word, and so that it was going to be accessible by everyone. And we'll talk more a little bit about accessibility too as well. We also emphasize you, the parent, throughout the document. You will find you is underlined, bolded. We wanted parents to take ownership in this document. This is their parent notice. We also realize that professionals use this as as guidance for them as well, and they use this document, but we wanted to make sure that parents understood that this was their parent notice. And also you will see a lot about collaboration and how we want to model that collaboration. So from the very top, from OEC coming to the Parent Training Information Center and collaborating, we were trying to model that with school districts and parents as well. And so here is just a little bit, you'll see a little bit of what we have inside there kind of in comparison. And some of the things that we talk about being different is visuals. There were a lot of different visuals that we used in here. You'll see the stop signs. There also, I want to say as well, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just putting pictures in for picture's sake. We wanted to make sure that we were aligning the content with visuals and making it meaningful. There's bolder words, larger fonts. We used plain language. We wanted to make sure that this was accessible to all. And then also we have a glossary of common language and definitions. Common language is new, definitions, maybe not so new because we kind of brought those back from whose idea, but the common language was an idea to make sure that these are the words, or these are the words and definitions that you're going to hear throughout the process. Those are just some of the things. And so throughout, you know, early on throughout the parent notice, as we were working through it, we realized that everything that we really felt needed to be in there, I shouldn't say needed, that we felt that was very supportive and that you could go into a deeper dive into, we really felt early on that there needed to be something else to support the parent notice. And I want to say, so when we came up with the idea of having a compass or toolkit, we really wanted to make sure that we had all the information that the parent needs or the reader needs, but the toolkit and the compass would serve as a support system for that. So we decided to come up with a name that would kind of tie into the roadmap, and that is the compass, which will serve as a toolkit. It will not be required for districts to provide, although it would be highly encouraged. And we are still working through you know, what that compass is going to look like. We're also doing additional trainings that are going to come out with the rollout of the parent notice this year. So we talked about, we did deeper dives into the IEP process, surrogate parents, and then early childhood and preschool in the compass. And so we also have accessible supplemental information like we talked about, and that could be in the form of trainings, the compass, and then we're also looking at other areas as well. And then parents and professionals will have training on this throughout the rollout next year, or next school year, but this year. And so I'm just going to show you just a little bit. I'm just going to scroll really fast because I'm going to actually show you the working draft right now. And if you just give me a moment, I am going to stop sharing my screen. And then I will pull up the draft. Is there, Mark, are you there? He might not be. Okay. I just wanted to see if there were any questions for Danielle.
Yeah, there was one question, Tammy.
Okay.
Let's see. Scott wanted to know if the document is available in alternative formats.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we are all the accessibility pieces we OEC will be working on before it rolls out. So yes, it will be there. Like I said, this is in draft form. So there's talk about what the accessibility is going to look like, translations, all that, but that all is going to be provided. Just how it's going to look right now, I can't really say, you know, what they're going to use and how they're going to do that. There was talk about making it available audio and all different formats. So, you know, yes, that will be, and accessibility was at the top of our priorities. So that's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yes. And let me share, and I'm just going to do a high level overview of the document, but I want to get pulled up really quick. Okay, could somebody just give me a thumbs up that they see it? Okay, all right, that's great. And are you able to see it good? I just want to make sure, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I can see, like, you know, the Adobe or with the PDF stuff on the right hand side, but I can see the document pretty well.
Okay, well, I can get rid of that, I think. Oh, maybe not. believe there is a way to minimize it, but I have so many things in my way. I apologize.
There's that
Yeah, there's
little
a-
arrow on the right
That's
that
what I
you
was gonna
click
say.
Where is it at?
by the comment, where the word comment is on the right-hand side. Do you see the word comment on the right-hand column?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
right to the left of
little
that.
arrow to the left. In the gray.
Gotcha. There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not going to stop in every area, but I'll just kind of stop and give you a little bit of overview here. And so you'll probably see, some of you may notice, we did take this section from a guide. This was something that we felt very strongly everybody, and based on feedback, everybody still wanted, they love this, and this is fillable for districts. Also, we made sure, you know, when we were looking at printability, we kept that in mind. We felt, you know, we heard back from a lot of districts that, you know, what it's like to print a lot of ink. So we made sure that we were, you know, very conscious of that as well. And we also, you know, made sure that we put in where you can put your local state support team, your parent mentor, obviously your PTI information, Parent Training Information Center, your state P&A, which is Disability Rights Ohio. And then based on a lot of feedback we heard too is, you know, if I'm a new parent to the process, where do I start? So we wanted to give a starting point to parents and that are new to the process. And then you'll see here too, where we talk about the Compass Toolkit and it being a companion document, but also, you know, the stop sign. So wherever you see a stop sign or a yield sign, you're, you know, to stop, look at that definition, it'll explain the word to you. And then also, if there's a yield sign, you're going to hear this language probably repeatedly throughout the process. And also a little bit about the graphics too. You know, we got a lot of feedback on the sketch. People really like the sketch, the sketching kind of graphics. And then here is your table of contents. We did too, I want to say, and then there's, if you'll see, there is an added section in here on special education FAQs. I want to see if there's anything else that kind of stuck out. We felt this was really important to talk about your steps for working with your school district. Even if you are not in the special education process, you know, we wanted to really highlight where, you know, how you should take these steps and where you should start. So, you know, you start at the building level, administrative level, state level. And then this is the intro. Right here, I just want to stop and talk a little bit about the introduction, and we talk about, you know, what the Compass and the toolkit is. We are going to be adding those links. That was something else that we were very mindful about too, is, you know, we wanted to make sure that we did not add a link heavy document that would rely on somebody being able to have access to technology or to a computer in order to get that information. So wherever we did put a link, we also put the information easily for them to be able to access it. Here we talk a lot about the collaboration between the Ohio Department of Education, Office for Exceptional Children, and the collaboration with OCECD. I just want to kind of highlight right here, one of the things we got back in from the leadership at OEC was it's by parents for parents, and the volume that speaks in order to make sure that parents understand their rights under the law. It was great to be able to have that. So we wanted to quote him, and we felt that would really resonate with parents. this is our definition section, common language. Just going to keep scrolling through a little bit. And these are some of the words, the word wall of some of those common language definitions you're going to see. Keep going through the definitions. And if you see in all these sections at the top, it looks like a tab. That was another thing that we talked about early on, was when we used to present our parents' rights training. We would take them, and this was at the time when Whose Idea was out, and there was a lot of content in Whose Idea, and it was not really easy for parents to find the information in there. So we would take them through and tab those sections so it was easy to find. So one of the things that we thought about when we were working through this is, why don't we tab these sections for them? They're already tabbed. So as you can see, role of a parent. And this is where it talks about what the role of a parent is. A surrogate parent kind of goes into that, talks about what the duties are of a surrogate parent. Parent participation. And you see here, sometimes we'll have a little stop sign where we feel like it's important for a parent to know. Parent participation. We wanted to make sure too, if you see so there was a visual, so they know what that parent invitation looks like. Parental consent.
Tammy, there was a
Yep.
question that popped up if you wanted to stop for a second.
Yeah.
So someone has asked, how do we get this document and parent notice document? They arrived late, so they weren't sure if you already answered that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is going to roll out this year. Right now it's currently in draft form and it's going through. So they probably didn't hear me in the beginning, and that's okay. So currently it's going through the Ohio Department of Education, Office for Exceptional Children's Legal Department. So we have not heard back from them yet, but it is set to roll out this school year. What
Gotcha.
date for sure? I don't have that. But as
Thank
soon as
you.
we find out, everybody will, believe me. And then we felt this was very important too, to make sure that they understood what the procedural safeguard notice must include under notices. There's that evaluation roadmap I was talking about. Child find. That was another return. We heard a lot of feedback on that. They were really excited, professionals and parents as well, that the disability categories were back in.
I will say that was the one thing I missed, the big clunky packet. And when they did the new one, they took out the disability categories. So I'm excited to see that back in there, because I personally was upset by that.
Yes, I think we all were.
Yeah.
We all wanted that back. So, and then also we now have developmental delay till the child's 10th birthday, which is new in Ohio. So we added that information in there. So
Awesome.
yeah. Outside evaluations. And again, we really wanted it to be engaging for parents. And we did, and that in our parent forums, we did hear back that they felt like this was something that they were interested in reading. So we're really excited about that as well. independent evaluations, transfer of rights. And anywhere we felt like they needed to know that there's going to be a deeper dive into that compass, we put a sign there, or see the compass toolkit for more information. Again, they have all the information that's required by law in this document, but we think in the compass toolkit, there could be a deeper dive. And dispute resolution, which is the hardest to keep interesting, but we managed to do that somehow. And break down all those days and make it understandable for parents, because the days can sometimes feel like they're all intertwining. Facilitation and mediation. Again, we wanted to make sure they could see the forms and what they look like. And then we felt it was very important for them to understand the 6 guiding principles when writing a state complaint, that those, that you really have to use those as a guideline on whether or not it falls under one of those. And again, making sure we use the forms, our stop signs, our nice little stay put stop sign. And I hope I'm not getting everybody dizzy by scrolling so fast, but like I said, it's really high level overview. We have a little did you know in here.
Tammy, you got 2 questions that popped up.
Yeah, great.
All right. The first one is, will the compass toolkit also be housed on the same website as the new roadmap for parents?
Yes. Well, yes and no. It'll be, the Ohio Coalition will have the access to that, but they will so it'll be on a website that we operate, the Ohio Coalition does, but the department will be sharing that website on theirs as well. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
So
So
they're not running it. We will be, but they will be sharing that information. Yes.
okay. So it'll kind of be a link through them to you.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. And then someone wanted to know if you could please explain the stop sign and yield sign again.
Oh, okay. So the stop sign is definitions and the yield sign is common language. So the common language is words they're going to hear throughout the special education process repeatedly. It's common. And we wanted to bring their attention to that. Does that help? I hope.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we're still kind of going through the dispute resolution process. Let me tell you how fun that was. It's not easy to make that interesting. Discipline. And then we're getting towards the end here. I just want to show you guys the FAQ section. So we called this beyond the roadmap, and we identified, and this was again based on input from stakeholders, what those FAQs are. And you see, we talk about scholarships, ESY, huge. Consent for initial IEPs. And a whole lot of misinformation out there about suspensions and informal removals and undocumented suspensions. So we wanted to address that. And developmental delay or big change as we were going through this process as well. So we had to go back and change a lot of that. And then obviously, you know, for parents, the difference between 504 and an IEP. And that concludes the high level overview of the draft. So I thank you guys for like putting up with me just scrolling through that really fast, but I hope it was helpful for everyone. Was there any other questions?
Nothing else came through yet.
No.
Yeah, we can take a few minutes if anyone has questions
Yeah,
related
for
to
sure.
this or anything special education related. We have a few extra minutes.
And we want to honestly, on behalf of the coalition, I just want to thank parents and professionals and all the agencies that we worked with throughout for their patience. And but this was the first time ever that this has been, the parent notice has been well, you know, rewritten by a parent training information center, I think nationally, and as well that, you know, we involved that OEC really took the time to have that stakeholder input from the very beginning. And so I was appreciative, but I know it's also hard when you're working with a draft document to be able to, you know, work through something and also be able to give input. So we just want to say thank you for everyone, parents, agencies, professionals across the state of Ohio for their patience, for their input. We truly believe this document is a collaborative stakeholder document that everybody participated in. And we're proud to be in Ohio.
Yeah, it's great to see a preview of it too.
Yeah, I can't wait till it rolls out.
I was going to say thank you for sharing that, Tammy. And one thing that you said that I wanted to point out was that you said it's not easy to make this look interesting. And that's true. And that's kind of the problem with the old ones, is seeing you go through this draft. I know it's not final yet, but I'm really excited to see how it's laid out because it looks a lot more interesting to read and just a lot more, I guess, overall readable to families, especially with the visuals too.
Yeah, it was interesting. Thank you for saying that, Renee. It was interesting. So my husband, being part of the special education process for years, I was getting ready to leave for one of our stakeholder input meetings, and I had the draft printed out, and he's seen it, and he was looking. He goes, "Oh," he goes, "Is this the parent notice that you've been working on?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, now I'd read this." Now, coming from my husband, and he's seen many of them, for him to say that, I was like, "Oh, this is good." This is good. So we did. I mean, and it's much more than engagement. I mean, we also had to make sure legally that it was, and that's why we're in that process right now, and that we did hear from and got all that professional input as well. You know, we have to make sure that that content is, you know, legally what it's supposed to say. So that's why I'm saying I so appreciate it was not just the Ohio Coalition and OEC working on this document. I truly feel like this was a collaborative effort.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. There is a question. It's an interesting one. It said, if this is open to any questions, could anyone address special education when identified by a district in an ETR, but parents choose to homeschool? And I can say from the, you know, the view from 10,000 feet there is this district still have an obligation to identify children that reside in the district, even if they are homeschooled, and, you know, draft an IEP. And assuming they qualify, and then the homeschooling part, I'm going to defer to Danielle. I'm going to catch her off guard. Danielle is a homeschool parent, so
I was ready for it. No, and I was going to say, if they identified and wrote an IEP, but you chose not to take them to the public school, and certainly you have the scholarship options available to you, but you would still be on the school's radar, right? So you'd still be in their system somehow. And so they would still be responsible for coming back 3 years from that ETR date to reevaluate, to check up on your students, see how they're doing, and see if they still, you know, need services. But I would say if you have that IEP, then absolutely take advantage of the scholarship, the John Peterson or Autism Scholarship, to get supports and services. But once you decide to homeschool, you withdraw them from the public school. So the public school is not necessarily, they don't need to service your child or service the IEP they wrote, but there should be an IEP in place, hopefully. If you've done the each year process, but it didn't quite get to an IEP, I would ask more questions about that. And I don't know if they want to elaborate on that, but that would be my answer, I guess, with what we have.
Mhm. The point about the scholarship being available is an important one. So additional services can be provided by service providers through the scholarships.
Absolutely.
Another good question. I have a school that's refusing to provide a virtual link for ESY. The student sits in the office and does ESY virtually with the resource teacher. The school is requesting mediation because they won't provide the link to do it at home. We asked for prior written notice, and what would be the next step for a family state complaint. We already did mediation to come up with ESY, but they did not share it would be virtual at the school. Yeah, that's if it wasn't identified as virtual, but I'm open to hear what anybody else has to say.
We lost
about
you
that.
for a minute, Mark, I think.
Oh,
you
shoot.
froze.
Did you hear the question?
Yes.
Okay, I'll let somebody else help me. But I think if it wasn't identified as virtual and they're providing it as virtual, I think that's a little bit of a, I guess, bait and switch by the district. I think it should be identified how the instructions are going to be provided. And then I guess that if they're refusing to provide the link, that's strange that they're doing it virtual but won't give it to you to do the work at home. So yeah, something's not computing there for me. I'm not sure.
Well, it says that ESY was a part of the mediation, so I would assume through that mediation agreement, ESY would have been spelled out maybe at least a little bit. So if the school is not complying with that agreement, then that would certainly be an issue if they decide to do virtual, whereas that wasn't a part of the agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was either an oversight or, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, instruction should be identified as either virtual instruction or in person.
Yeah, I mean, I think a state complaint is certainly appropriate if the child needs ESY and the district was supposed to provide it, but they aren't providing it. And whether even if they agreed that it would be provided virtually, if they're not providing the link, and so ESY is not getting done, then to me that would still be an issue that could be hopefully resolved through a state complaint process.
Yeah, and you technically have a contract if you have an agreement coming out of mediation. You might want to look back at that and see if it does spell out what it said for ESY, if anything, about how that was going to be delivered. And if that's a breach, you might have some other options for remedying that breach other than a state complaint or due process.
The Mary Kate says the IEP did not get done. So the ETR was done. So I'm assuming maybe the ETR was done and then you pulled your child out for homeschooling and the IEP didn't get done. So I mean, that's kind of it depends on what the timeline, I suppose, is. I mean, with the ETR being done, if you're kind of out of that 30 days to write an IEP, I think that there might be an issue there trying to get an IEP, but I think it just depends on where you're at and how things ended. Perhaps you go back to the district and say, hey, you identify my child had a disability. I don't know what happened. Something happens. Could we get that back on track and maybe do a reevaluation to get an IEP or a new initial to get an IEP? Yeah, I think if you talk to your district and be open and honest about maybe what occurred, I don't think they'd have any problem if they already identified your child as having a disability to go back and do that again. And it would be mostly a reevaluation because they wouldn't have to do hopefully new assessments. But yeah, it sounds like you're in a sticky situation, but hopefully you could get that resolved quickly to get an IEP than to get those scholarships.
Yeah, I think that will end up being a similar answer for this one. When it comes to your child having an aide during the school day, how many aides should your child have? Good question. Currently, our district is paying an alternative education program for schooling and agree the child needs an aide. However, she's getting passed between several different people and they are not utilizing one aide. It's causing the child major regulation and sensory issues. Anything that can be done or worded in an IEP that could remedy the situation or issue.
I ran into this a few times this past school year, and I was always of the belief that having one dedicated, one-on-one aid was the best for students. But then I had other individuals from different professional arenas kind of go against that thought process, that perhaps it's better to have different people supporting your child because it'll get your child used to different people and different ways of doing things. And I do think districts like being able to utilize different people because obviously they can pull people from different areas or different classrooms when they need to support your students. But I think if your student's having a really hard time with that change up, then that certainly is something that should be brought to the attention of the school. It sounds like the public school is paying the alternative school for the aid. And so your public school then would be the person you want to go to hopefully make this change and make the case for a dedicated one-on-one. But I know staffing has been an issue in many school districts across Ohio. And so it may be that they can't honestly afford to pay a one-on-one. So they're kind of utilizing aid services with what, using what they have. So I think we've had some of me and my clients, we've had to kind of weigh that. Do we want support? And maybe that looks like having different people support your student or, having to wait to see if they can hire somebody. So but I would say at the end of the day, go to your public school, go to your district of residence and try to resolve that if you can. So utilizing bathroom and feeding specifically should be the same aid. I mean, I honestly would say I don't think it needs to be, but you could always maybe have like a log or a notebook if you want to make sure there's common language or communication that's going back to you so everybody's on the same page. I think that would be an easy solution if you're worried about maybe people doing different things or observing different things. So maybe having a notebook or some sort of communication tool that then comes back to you so you know what's going on. I don't see that necessarily being an issue, but I don't know your child. So there may be specific needs that they have that maybe that's where you're inquiring.
Danielle, I would say too, peer professionals are supposed to be under the guidance of that intervention specialist or the teacher.
Very true.
So, it should be laid out really well. And I think sometimes where you don't see a specific person being named, I think it goes back to, and you guys might want to weigh in on this as well. It goes back to why we don't see specific programs written in specially designed instruction, because there's not a lot of control on whether or not Wilson went out of business or,
Right.
And so they don't have control over people as well. And especially like you said, with the shortages right now that's occurring. And if that person's leaves, takes another position, it's hard to kind of specify who that person is. So
Right.
that's just my feedback.
And another reason to have multiple people, because you're right, there have been a lot of times where there's changeover in staff and now that student is, they've lost the only person that they've been used to. So having other people kind of float in and out is always good for that. Because you don't have control over personnel, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're so used to anticipating what the school's going to say that we should also say that, look, if it's causing the child major regulation and sensory issues, at least you have to address that with the IEP team. So, they may not have a personnel issue, or they may at least be able to provide some additional consistency if there are one or two aides or paraprofessionals who are trained maybe a little bit better or work with the child a little bit better. So at least ask the question, can we figure out how to, minimize these regulation and sensory issues and see, what the response is. We just, from our experiences are used to districts saying, well, we can't control the personnel, but maybe, there might be a chance that they can a little bit more than we anticipate.
Since we've mentioned the scholarships a couple of times, I just wanted to let everybody know, you may already know this, that there were changes to what a qualified child is under the autism scholarship in the budget. Makes it much easier for kids to qualify for the autism scholarship. There, in the past, a kid had to have an autism eligibility category from the school districts, but now with the change in the budget, that could be a reason they qualify. But if they have an IEP that provides services that are related to autism, they can also qualify. Or if they've just been diagnosed as autistic by a physician or a psychologist, they now are eligible for the autism scholarship. So that makes it much easier for families to pursue the scholarship and takes away that problem where school districts were refusing to identify kids under the autism category because they didn't want the parents to take the scholarship and leave.
Good to know.
Good point. Yeah.
Kristen, do you know if they're coming out with any guidance documents on that?
I don't, but they're gonna have to do something. They're gonna have
Yeah.
to change they're gonna have to change the rule.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I can see this being a little messy, just a little.
Yeah, so get the word out. Because I think that change is immediate. Once the budget passed, I think the change was immediate, so.
Ashley says, where should an ASL interpreter be written into the IEP when it's needed for access all day? Primary mode of receptive language.
Oftentimes I see that written into the accommodation section, because it's not necessarily like, well, it could be a related service provider. So it could be under related services, could be under accommodations. Districts tend to write those individuals in different parts of the IEP. I think that the goal would just be to make sure it's stated that the ASL interpreter is available to the student all day. So I just think as long as that language is stated in section 7 somewhere, I wouldn't get hung up on where it's located. But some people will put it in related services and then they'll attach a minute amount to that. But a lot of times I see it's more in the accommodation section.
And then who can we talk to about busing to private schools based on needs from the home district? If it's busing as a service, it has to be an IEP team meeting. If it's busing as a requirement of the home district to bus to a private school as usual, then I think you need to talk to the transportation director at the public school district. And I'm open to any clarification on that from anybody else.
John Peterson scholarship is 30 minutes from your district of it's your building. I think it's building of attendance.
Yeah, it's the building, and that's across the board, even without the scholarship, to a private school.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're accepting the scholarship, so if they're providing busing for that same age student in the district, then they should be providing busing within a 30-minute drive from the building you're assigned to the private school. And if it's transportation as a service, then it's an IEP team issue that you have to address with the team.
And I was going to say on the transportation, I've had some school districts that definitely will try to take a longer route if possible. That might be 31 minutes. So, I think some school districts will try their best to get out of having to transport those kids, but yeah, it's 30 minutes.
And if it's not on the IEP that transportation is required, they can pay you instead of transporting you too. So if the board of education decides that transportation is impractical, then they can give you a payment instead of providing transportation.
They can also contract with a private transportation service, like a van service. And that would be even if the district placed your child at a school, for instance, like the Ohio School for the Deaf or Blind, that might be without, outside that 30-minute window, of course. But if they've been placed there, then transportation can be again in lieu of, so they could pay you, or they could pay for a private transportation service. So
yeah, and Ashley did say she's on the scholarships. Okay, well, we have the individual guidance sessions coming up at 1 o'clock, so we're going to have to jump off. I don't know the answer to that question, Steve. I would there is application of section 504 in the ADA to after school programs. I can say that. So I guess the federal law in cases does apply to those programs, and those are civil rights statutes. So I'm not sure that the school district itself has any oversight to those after school programs, but the laws do. So that's I guess my answer to that question. Does the school district have any oversight to a private company that provides an after school program to ensure that the students' civil rights are protected? That's my first thought. I don't know if anybody else has anything else.
I would say probably not, unless it's an unusual situation where the school has said that program is part of a free appropriate public education for that child. In that case, the school would have some obligation, but otherwise, if it's just a general after school program, no oversight from the school district.
I would say, or if a school district was willing to provide like aid support or something in an after school program. Yeah, I would say if the school district is tied to the after school program somehow, some way. Or I was thinking too, what if the private provider had to pay the school? If there was any sort of financial relationship, that was more of a question, but I'm not sure if that would have impacted that issue.
Yeah. Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it off here, but if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email me and I'll distribute them to our team here. Mark@education-rights.com. MARK@education-rights.com. And then please do sign up if you haven't already for our transition series, which is going to start in September. We take a month off, and post-secondary transition with the 3 organizations, OCECD, DRO, and AW. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks for having me. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Tammy.
Tammy.